Commission meeting for May 24th. We have a roll call, please, Bethany?
Commissioner Curry?
Here.
Commissioner Krillenberger?
Here.
Commissioner Hurley is absent. Commissioner Jablonski is absent. Commissioner Cernovich?
Here.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Mics are hot.
Commissioner Fiasconi?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Chairman Cashman?
Here. Our next order of business are public comments for any non-agenda items. Is there anyone here for anything not on our agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on. Next, our approval of our minutes from our April 13th meeting. Do the commissioners have any suggested revisions or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved. Second, Curry.
We have a roll call vote, please, Bethany?
Commissioner Curry?
Aye.
Commissioner Krillenberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Cernovich?
Aye.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Abstain.
Commissioner Fiasconi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Abstain.
Chairman Cashman?
Aye. Next order of business are findings and recommendations. We have one, it's case A-08, 2022 for 222 East Ogden Avenue for Normandy Remodeling, exterior appearance and site plan review to allow for various improvements to the site plan, exterior elevations of the existing building at 222 East Ogden in the B3 General Business District. Do the commissioners have any comments or revisions for the findings of fact and recommendation as submitted? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the findings of fact and recommendation as submitted?
Krillenberger, so motions.
A second?
Second, Curry.
Okay. May we have a roll call vote, please, Bethany?
Commissioner Curry?
Aye.
Commissioner Krillenberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Cernovich?
Aye.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Aye.
Commissioner Fiasconi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Abstain.
Chairman Cashman?
Aye. Okay, next we have one public hearing. It's case A-35, 2021, text amendment, plan development concept plan, special use permit to allow for the development of Vine Street Station consisting of 12 age-restricted lifestyle housing units within an existing building at 125 South Vine Street, and a major adjustment to the Zion Lutheran Church plan development. And I believe we need to swear in any individuals who want to speak on this matter. If you could please stand up and be sworn in.
Right. Do we need to do something first, or just need to have the truth, the whole truth, and the truth?
Okay, thank you. And if we could hear from the applicant. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Can you hear me okay? Good evening. My name is Drew Mitchell. I'm a resident of Hinsdale. I live near 7th and Garfield, and I've been raising my family here since 2013, and I love this town. I never even knew it existed. Grew up in Minnesota, found Hinsdale, and fell in love with it. Professionally, I'm a partner with a real estate development company called Holiday Properties. We're a family-owned company. We're based in South Bend, Indiana. We're entrepreneurial. We take great pride in our projects and the buildings that we do. Our office is in downtown Clarendon Hills. In this area, we're particularly known for what are called transit-oriented developments, which are medium-sized luxury apartment buildings along sort of whistle-stop suburban Chicago. Products that you may be familiar with would be Burlington Station in downtown Downers Grove, which took a difficult to develop site right in the western edge of their downtown. That's a 90-ish unit building. It's one of the top 2 rated apartment buildings in the state of Indiana based on online user reviews. We're really proud of that. We tend to hold our real estate for long term, which is a decidedly different approach to how we go about building them. Who cares about all of that? We're here tonight to talk about the Zion School at 2nd and Vine. And I know there's a little novelette. I hope we didn't put you to sleep reading this in preparation for tonight, but it explains sort of how we came across this unique opportunity to potentially identify an approach to adaptive reuse for this building. This school was built in 1931 with a major addition in 1961. At its peak, it had approximately 200 students that were going to school there, K through 8. Unfortunately, there's been some obsolescence in these smaller schools in the K through 8 model. The school was utilized as a private academy for a period of time. That use is no longer. The only use as of the last, say, 5-ish years has been for utilizing the gymnasium for a local baseball team. So we became aware of the potential of this site to have an alternative use really from D181's office relocation analysis, where they explored 3 different sites. This was the big loser of the 3 because of obsolescence, because of parking challenges, and because of perhaps some floodplain issues. So, however, we started to study it. We being my team of Chris and Mike O'Connor and Donald and Lori and Grace, and starts the tour of the building, and we found out it's got pretty good bones. There's some real special stuff in this building. There's a 2-story stained glass window. Some of the cornerstones and the etched limestone on the building we thought was pretty cool. There's also some garbage on it, if you will. There's a glass block, which, I don't think Steve's probably used that in a long time on any projects that he's been involved in. Pastor Klein's here. I hope I don't insult you, but there's some pretty ugly grease traps hanging off the side of this building that are facing the neighbors. So in order to take the temperature of the community, which is important in our planning and entitlement process in Hinsdale, we were encouraged by village staff to host a neighborhood meeting. The first neighborhood meeting was hosted in August of 2021. There were people that weren't able to make that meeting. We hosted a second neighborhood meeting in September of 2021. I'd like to say that the reactions and the feedback that we got from the neighborhood largely informed the plans that you're seeing this evening. We had incredible attendance, quite frankly, at those neighborhood meetings, particularly relative to what we're seeing tonight. But I would say the project was generally well embraced and well received once we got past sort of the fear of unknown and what this might look like and what it would be. So I would, since Pastor Klein is here, I'd like to thank Pastor and the congregation. They voted in favor of the sale of this building and this asset to Holiday, pending successful navigation of our entitlement process. But what we're talking about here is taking this building and largely preserving the existing exterior facade, with the exception of a couple things. We're putting big, beautiful windows in that would be for each of these units, and there's also balconies on these units. The intent is to ramp down on the eastern portion of the site to an underground parking facility that would feature 22-ish underground and temperature-controlled parking spaces. We are targeting a demographic that we have great experience with, which is your downsizing empty nesters. There are precious few places for folks that are downsizing to stay and maintain close roots with their family, particularly when we're talking about trying to have some level of walkability, which is also very much in demand. So we got very comfortable that there could be an economically viable project here. But one of the things that is probably most intimidating of this process really is the entitlement. And in going through the motions in Hinsdale, where we take great pride in what we have today, and there is a sense that there is some resistance to change. This would be a multifamily project. It would be condominium. It would be for sale. The village board very much encouraged us to focus on a 55-plus demographic and not age-targeted, which is a way to say you're focused on that demographic but can do business with anybody. This would truly be age-restricted. There would be provisions in our bylaws in the HOA that would prevent certain things that came up both in neighborhood meetings and in the village board referral related to, for example, storing things on the balcony. But there's some renderings, Donald Edwin. You could show a couple of these real quick. And Chris Walsh, our architect's going to give a bit of a more thorough presentation. But I'd love to kind of just tell you what we're doing here. So a lot of this this limestone, and most of this exists. You just wouldn't know it because the building hasn't gotten a bath in probably 40 years. So a lot of this is cleaning it up. A lot of it is putting in appropriate, tasteful lighting, both up and down lighting you'll see, and then big windows. We're really trying to open up light and allow it to get into space. We have concern that we may only be able to get to 8.5-foot ceilings, which we wish they were 10. So part of what we're doing with these larger windows is lending the feel of volume that comes into the space. you know, it's a tricky building here because you're not really appreciating how far east it goes. You can just barely get a glimpse of this two-story stained glass. If you go on the stairway, I mean, it is a spiritual moment. The light coming in off of this glass, it's really wonderful. So our plan is actually to interior light that and have a soft glow at night when you're driving by and really kind of embrace that. On the front of the building, our intent is to create a modest but important outdoor living space that would allow our residents to be able to grill. They'd be able to have a glass of wine out there, have friends or family over. There'd be a TV. And then we would like to poke a hole into this part of the building so that you'd have interior access and truly make it a private space. A couple other things that we're doing that I think are pretty important are we're allocating space, green space. So this area has had issues with flooding. We're increasing the amount of permeable space on the site 12% on the gross. It's about a 40% increase, though, in the amount of permeable that exists. The idea here would be that we would have a public pocket park. So there's examples of these really all over, but this would be a place if you're walking back from Starbucks, you could stop and drink your coffee. It would be privately maintained but accessible to the public. On the eastern portion of the site, we're creating what we're calling a formal sitting garden and an opportunity for those who have pets to also bring their pets. And one of the things that we heard, I can't recall if it was a village board meeting or at the neighborhood meeting, is nobody really needs a pet run around here. Everybody's walking on the street. So perhaps this could get re-envisioned if it were to please the plan commission or if we came up with better ideas. And this just gives you an idea of how you would navigate, get into the lower level. It's actually really works very well. We would put in an elevator over in this space. That would create a need to have an elevator overrun on the roof of the building. But guys, we put a lot of thought into this. We're hoping that there's energy and reception towards an adaptive reuse of this building, realizing that multifamily may not be our favorite word here. Maybe I should delete it and just start speaking to it as condominium. But I think that's it. Chris and Mike, I don't know if you think I missed anything. I will tell you, the mayor of Down East Grove, I just bumped into him, and he doesn't get a vote, and I know it's another town, but he gave me a hug, and I said, Mayor, what's the hug for? And he went to school here, all through 8th grade. And he's just over the moon about the fact that we're trying to salvage this building, because really the alternative would be either as of right office, which I suppose could happen. However, one of the things that my partner Mike and I are running into is getting communities calling us saying, we have vacant office and we'd like to rethink this and reimagine this. So we've been reacting to that just from sort of a macroeconomic world. The other alternative would be more single-family homes. And while I live in one, and I know that that represents a big part of the underlying fabric here at Hinsdale, I just think this is a really cool opportunity to take a building that has historical or perceived historical value and turn it into something that works today and that works for the residents that live in Hinsdale and allows them to age in place here in town. So we're thrilled to have the ability to be able to see you guys tonight. We've been looking forward to this, quite frankly, for a very long time, and we're eager to move this project along should we be able to find your support. So thank you very much, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I want to add one thing to what Drew said about what we're asking for. Bethany mentioned it, but we're taking this school parcel and we're removing it from the existing plan development. That's one thing. And then we're asking for a fairly lengthy list of departures from the code. And I just want to make sure everyone understands we're not doing that because we're unhappy with the code. We're trying to keep the building envelope exactly the same and not kind of change the site at all. And
Right.
so everything we're doing is inside the building. And I mean, we're going to restore the envelope of the building, as you mentioned, restore it. But all the things that exist there, and they're causing us to have some hardships, for the most part. So I just wanted to.
Would you talk briefly, Mike, about too, that we're in a PUD and we affect the existing PUD, so we sort of have to apply on behalf of the church as well?
Yes, that was, the application was signed by the church, they're amending that PUD. It affects the adjacent homes, the pastor's residence to the east. So there's some subtle changes there. Actually, that site really doesn't change. Part of the subdivided lots that home sits on, actually have been used for a long time by the school. So we're just establishing that line and so I just wanted to add that. And I'll let Chris walk through the design of the project.
Great, thank you.
The architect, we'll go over a few things here that we've already talked about, but as Drew mentioned, Holiday, who didn't really perform too much, but Holiday is doing several projects, tuition projects in the area. That will look them up and see everything that's very good. So this is what Mike is referring to. The site is in the IB district right now, and it's really the campus of the current school, the church, parking lot, and there's two houses just south of the school that were taken out and put back into the Carlsbad district.
Great.
So part of what Mike was describing was, we'll actually, I'll show you a couple of slides, have to break up a couple of these things, take the school out of this district, just to keep within the codes. So this is the building in all its glory, current glory right now, and as you can see, there are, it's in need of some work. You can't really see everything on here, but there's a lot of glass block, a lot of old windows put in the 60s, doorways that we reworked. You can see the stained glass window right in the corner. But if you really look close, though, there are great details on this building. And the rendering, we actually did go and measure all the stonework, modeled it as best we could. So the rendering actually does capture the stonework and everything that's there. This is the current plat of survey. The school is actually on 2 lots. So it says lot 1 there, and it's a little bit deeper. And the lot 2 is actually what we call pastor's house. That's the house on the corner on the other side. So we'll actually have to give some land to the current pastor's house, to that lot 2, make that a conforming lot, make it a 125-foot deed, let that be separated on its own, and then what's left will be part of the school. And we feel it's plenty of room to do what we want. So this is what the current campus for the whole building, or for the whole church site. So this is the dark outline is the area that we want to break off for the school portion. And the pastor's house. To the right, to the south would be the church with its parking lot. And you can see in the northwest corner, the 2 homes that were previously separated. So if you want to read through what we're actually breaking off, the text is forever because it takes into account all of these pieces. But just in short, we have to take that out, but amend the So again, one last slide with the site plan. It's hard to see, but this actually shows there's a fence at the pastor's, the single family home, which borders, there's like a playground in the middle. That fence, it's going to move that fence will move to the east about 15 feet. So if you're standing there and you want to kind of understand, how big that lot will end up being, it's about a 15-foot move to the east of that fence. And I'll do that. Here it is, a little bit more color.
Chris, I'd like to just try along the plan. So when you say to give it back to the pastor's house, if you were to go there, there's a wooden fence right now that's east of where the new lot line would be. So there's actually a little further addition of land to what would now be passenger spot. So the building, the existing building is 3 stories. Our proposal is to create 12 dwelling units, 12 condos, and have 25 spaces of parking. This shows the lower level. So we're anticipating dedicating the entire lower level to parking. The new driveway, we're about 6 foot below grade, which is really not that much for a ramp down. So it would be a gradual ramp down just to the east of the building. And cars would take a left turn into the garage, there'd be a door on the eastern side. We figured there would be about 3 parking spaces at the end of that driveway and like a parcel delivery space or move-in space that would be there as well. Inside, we did get a comment about 8-foot wide parking spaces. Currently, the plans show 8-foot wide. Our problem right now is the next phase, getting into that detailed plan. We want to have 9-foot wide parking spots, believe me. But right now, we're not sure exactly where all the structure lands. So we're being conservative right now. At the end of the day, our plan is to have 9-foot parking spaces. I think it can be done in all parking spaces. But we kind of made the decision not to quite jump to that yet. We just want to, before we get into that, we really need to measure the building, understand how the structure will work, and then we can come back to intelligently and tell you what this parking space is. We are asking for a little bit of variance because we're working on existing conditions. Our aisle, space is a little bit, below code, but again, we're trying to get. We understand these are going to be, very luxurious condos, affluent people, and we want to have, the most space for them. So that's something that we plan to work out as we get into it. But right now, we feel what we have in front of you is very realistic as far as number of spaces. So as Drew mentioned, on the east side, that triangular corner, we're planning on landscaping that, creating kind of a public park that people can, walk by and be welcome to sit on. West side. Sorry, west side. Yeah. To the south of the building, kind of in the little side yard along 2nd Street, is really what we plan to do is create like a 5-foot fence that would be a mix of masonry, sculpted metal, really have kind of an ornamental fence with some greenery behind that to offer privacy. So people walking by with their dogs, this is really going to be kind of the yard for these tenants where they can just kind of walk down, have coffee, read an iPad, whatever it is. Maybe sit out there at night, have some wine. So they would have some privacy there. And then we have the driveway, which kind of separates the pocket park to the right. And we see that as really kind of a landscape place that maybe a little bit more space, wander around, maybe they're taking their dogs out there and running around. So there's really 3 distinct landscape areas that we really have in this So again, we've done our initial layouts. We feel, comfortable. These are roughly the size units we can get, 1,100 to 1,600 square foot units. A mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms, and each of them would have an outdoor space. That's something Holiday really impresses with all of their projects, is to have somewhere, to have an outdoor space. These would be 6-foot deep balconies that people would just come out there and sit down on. There was a little bit of concern with, the balcony, or some talk, but I think, after people have gotten used to it, they understand this is their front porch. These people need somewhere to kind of sit out. It offers safety in the community as well. People are sitting out there, they're watching the street. I encourage, it should be included. Even though I know, this is one of the variances that I'm asking for. But as Drew mentioned as well, it would be an eligible. And we're
planning on keeping the staircases where they are. There's actually a third staircase that would be removed at the north side from the original. So you see the existing building in the bottom left, and then, where the field the rendering would be of the final product. And as I mentioned, we actually did take a lot of care in this rendering to highlight all the limestone that's actually there. Brickwork, there really, if you get a chance, and, if you stop and look at it, there really is a lot of detail to this, especially this portion on the corner. That's the 1930s.
And, contrast it to the picture on the lower left. I mean, that's what we're seeing today. And I really think this could be magical. I really do. I have partners who are wondering what the heck I'm doing on this. This is a $6 million-ish project, $8 million-ish project. It's 12 units. It's for sale, operating income. And I don't really care. I'm excited about this opportunity to save this building. And I think our community would really value it. So I just want you to know, this isn't about making a bunch of money, guys. This is about having fun, maybe shortening my commute for 1 or 2 days a week, because it is in my backyard. So if there's selfishness, maybe that's it. But, I don't know what we're celebrating here on the lower left, but I do think that this canvas can be celebrated. And that's what I'm hoping we're conveying loudly today. So, thanks, Chris.
And again, this will look from the other side. There's the fence we're talking about, show as a screen, but there was metal work. Like I said, our plan is to do a nice ornamental fence. The window, the glass, stained glass window that's there, like you said, there is another picture in here from the inside. That doesn't even do it justice from the other side of the inside. It's really beautiful, and the intent would be to backlight it, softly backlight it, give it a little glow, and at night it would be a nice element that the street. And, outdoor area, and then you get a little glimpse of what we're anticipating the car ramping out. Just kind of an overall comment, Drew touched on it. We're actually increasing the permeable area. That's a good thing. So it's about the main thing I would get across on this slide. It shows the existing condition with the parking lot at the top. You can kind of see that we are making more green than in this. Conceptual landscape plan. It's not too much different than what we had shown before, and I know it's really hard to see. You have it in your packet. Our plan is to spend money on the landscape, create 3 distinct landscape areas. It may not be the final plant layouts, but again, that's something we plan to work out.
I would just add that this exhibit was informed by a visit from John Pennell, our arborist. We walked the site. We tried to identify which trees were really important to save. What he considered, I think his word was garbage. But there are some great trees out here, and then there's some stuff that's not. And we want trees. We want to have that. So just mostly trying to show that our village arborist has reviewed the site.
Again, a little more detailed plan. So just imagery of what we're seeing on this site. The furniture, the planting, the benches, that kind of thing. Again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. This is more of an imagery board, kind of give you an understanding of what we feel we can add to the site. Okay, so, little picture. This is just to highlight, some of the stonework that's there, and also the glass block window. And there is a cornerstone with a particular one on it. All this would get cleaned. You can get a better look at the main entry on the right-hand side. Again, all the stonework, the detail that is in this building. The soldier courses, the brick, everything. It's really it's a beautiful building. They don't build these things. And then from the inside, the stained glass window, which is in great shape on the inside. It's really bright. It's just they put like a really kind of older window on the outside that's gotten very fogged up. And so you really can't appreciate it unless you're, you can see on the left-hand side where they just kind of put protective windows on, which is great, it's protected the window, but let's see what we can do to get that blue and color on the outside. Okay, so these are more technical drawings. Basically it's what we looked at. We are asking for variances on the height, but we're not changing the height of the building. We're just stating what the building height is. We're not that far off. The current code is. Rear setback is about 6 feet, a little over 6 feet. It's got to be more than that. Front setback off the street is about 28 feet, and it's about 35. We're close on some, we're not on others, but, it's an existing building, there's only so much we can do. So we just ask for, everybody's reasonable. We're going to ask for some variances and capital, and comments around the setbacks. Is that,
Right.
Thank you.
yeah, go ahead.
So, I guess beyond that, we bring in attention to detail to these projects that are important. We understand how this demographic lives. We've been bringing fiber optic into our buildings and often all the way to the unit, which future-proofs the buildings. We believe all of us should be driving electric vehicles in 20 years. We're providing sufficient panel space. We plan to have electric vehicle charging stations in this building. And we can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. You might be sick of hearing from us at this point, but thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys giving us this audience. And thank you, Pastor. They've been very patient with us. We live in a world where we have a contract, right? And we're trying to perform against that contract. So I just want you to know how much we appreciate you and the congregation having given us the time to navigate a gauntlet like this in a town that doesn't, we have standards and there's a reason why. And you go through our community and you understand why we have these great standards. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Drew. Commissioners, Cynthia, questions for the applicant?
A couple questions. One was going to be, are they condos or apartments? Because I was almost led to believe, I was thinking it was condos, but it is most definitely condominiums that will be being purchased, correct?
Yes, that's correct. These would be for sale condominiums. And I'll just offer it because it came up. Previously, there were questions about whether these could be turned into rentals or could be turned into Airbnbs. And the idea would be that we would utilize the bylaws of the building to prevent that.
Okay. Can I ask a
Yes,
couple
please,
more?
go
I will
ahead.
wait my turn,
Yeah.
but elevators, one elevator in the building?
That's correct. This would be a single elevator. We believe it would be a Kone with an extended ceiling height, which makes move in, move out a little bit easier. A lot of people don't know this. It's only like $1,500 to get another foot when you're putting in an elevator.
Okay.
We always do it, but it'd just be one single elevator.
Okay. One of my biggest concerns is traffic, and the entry level in the 2 bedrooms. What are you looking at, the price point of these? From what to what?
Sure. So the first question was related to vehicular traffic. So I guess what I would say to that is whatever was there as a school of 200 kids, or what could be done as of right as an office building will pale in comparison to a building like this. There's a perception often that even much larger projects that we're involved in are huge traffic generators. And they tend not to be. One, because we're doing walkable product, okay? And that does influence how people go and get things like a coffee. We can walk to a grocery store from this location. So traffic will be a non-issue. I suspect we'll be obligated to provide a traffic study as part of the planning commission process in our formal submittal. The second question, oh boy.
Price.
Price.
Oh, price. If you asked me a year ago, I would have felt a lot more comfortable answering that question. We are facing unprecedented interest rate increases on a percentage basis as well as price volatility. And it is a heck of a double whammy in our business. So we really thought that these would be probably in the high 6s to the mid 9s-ish. but we just don't know right now. We're kind of flying blindly, knowing that there's a lot of demand, and there may be a lot of price elasticity in Hinsdale. So, not sure, but that would be my kind of dark range of person to it.
Thank you. I'm just with the market, and nobody has a magnifying glass to tell where we're going, but that might impact where this, is there any fear generated around where this may end up by the time you finish them?
I'm not afraid.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's going to be hard for us to get hurt on this if we do it well and we do it thoughtfully. We aren't rushing, right? I mean, a big next step is really getting inside this building and understanding what we have to work with. So that's where we could goof up, is by not properly understanding, for example, the structure or how we could, delineate between units. And what we've done so far has not been us just, in a vacuum. I mean, we've been in the building. But, even if rates continue to go up, or even if home prices continue to go up, I believe that we're reasonably well insulated in this community, because I believe people want to live here. And it really is a special place, right? I mean, whether it's uniquely Thursdays or the vibrancy, you can't get a Starbucks without a drive-through in Illinois anywhere. And, we just saw Starbucks Itasca pulled down. I mean, and they had a drive-through. People want to be here, guys. The other part of this is really that a lot of folks, you may have a mother or an aunt, they would love to live here. Because I think your alternatives, while they're great, it maybe is the Hamptons and Hinsdale, or maybe it's the development at County Line and 55th, but it doesn't provide walkability. And so to me, that's part of this urban heartbeat, is being able to have access to the parks, seeing younger people biking and walking and throwing the ball to their dogs. So I also think that I mentioned this project to a friend who's a realtor, and I couldn't have been more disappointed with the reaction. It was very nonplussed. It was, that corner is dark and it feels gross. And it was like a really disappointing reaction. I'm not going to hire this person at some point. But I think perhaps the building today is contributing to that feeling at this particular corner. And I actually think this could really create some positive energy for this little pocket of Hinsdale. I noticed even the building immediately north of us, which is like 119 South Vine, just underwent a pretty thoughtful rehab. And, so I just think quality investment begets quality investment. And so one of the things that's been truly a joy for me is professionally seeing what happens when we build great buildings, because it is absolutely energizing to stuff around us. So, I can just say that. I guess, Chris, thought it was a very nice introduction to the holiday and our project, but you can go see what we're doing. I mean, our project in downtown Westmont at Cass and Quincy is game-changing for their downtown. They had over 30 commercial vacancies before we started this project, and they have virtually none now. And it was a huge bet on our part, but we studied data, we understood who was going to want to live there, and we're 40% leased, and we don't even open for 2 months, and nobody's been in the building. So it speaks to the quality of our projects, the desirability for walkability, and that probably answered your question. Sorry for the diatribe.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize. One of my concerns was the parking, though, and the 8-foot versus the 9, and the aisle space being more limited. I'm guessing occupants of this will probably have 2 cars. I'm guessing a lot of them will have electric cars.
Yep.
They're going to be older. I think there's only one space that's a larger space. Am I wrong for
Correct.
access?
For ADA.
Just one handicap?
that's
Yeah,
too far.
I'm just wondering if you need more. And I know you're limited, and I appreciate the fact that you're trying to fit it within that structure, and I think it looks beautiful. Just a few questions like that, and I don't want to monopolize.
Well, I do, but I'd like to quickly react to that. We hear you. I mean, we know everybody gets frustrated when there are really narrow spots. When you live in a building, it's very different than going in a random parking garage. So I feel like you sort of get to know your 3-point turn or whatever you're doing. But we're going to try to make that as gracious and as wide as we possibly can. And I think what Chris is doing is a little trick to give himself some flexibility when he starts, really ripping open the cereal box. Where am I going? Do you get what I mean? When he starts getting inside of this and trying to understand what it would, but we're gonna have to come back to you guys at some, to get our formal approval, and I think we'll have that pretty dialed in at that point.
Yes,
Yeah.
monopolize it,
That's
sir.
great. No, anytime, Cynthia.
I'll
Jim?
be brief. My kids went to preschool in the building. I'm a big fan of the building. I'm thrilled that it's being converted to 12 units. So can you elaborate a little bit on the open space that's next to the pastor's residence? That's for residents of the building use
Yeah,
rather
so
than public
I
use,
think
right?
if I were able to zoom in, I would really zoom in on this picture right here. So this was our inspirational picture, the second from the top right, and it's really a sitting garden. But the idea would be, we don't know how much it'll be used, but part of it is just being beautiful. And so driving by and seeing that and knowing you could go out there and read a book was the thought. So am I answering?
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
question?
Is there, and I don't know what, I know when we did the approval of the property at 55th and Garfield, there was a lot of talk about homeowner association and bylaws, and you've mentioned that.
Sure.
Is, given the parking concerns, is there expected to be a provision that will keep that open space rather than concrete, asphalt, new parking?
So if that were a concern, I think that that's something that would become perhaps a deed restriction. I don't know how they'd ever pull a permit to pave that. People would lose their lid.
Right.
I'm glad you weren't asking me to put parking there because we don't want to. We don't really want any more parking. We feel very comfortable at a 2-to-1 level. And we're actually a little north of that, and we have room for visitors and we have room for drop off. So, if the concern was, long-term maintenance, and somehow it not being appealing, I'm not concerned about that because I feel like just for the sheer sake of preservation of homeowner values, your HOA is going to take it very seriously. I worry that they may have a better idea once they're living here how that space could be used. And so that to me is a more likely outcome, that at some point they're coming back and saying, hey, we've rethought this space. And, or it felt like it was public and people were using it. And maybe that's a requirement, and I'm not trying to look at the village president talked about handcuffs.
Yes.
We don't like unnecessary handcuffs.
I think he said he did.
He does, yes.
Unnecessary handcuffs.
So his that way.
The idea would be that, we've got the land, we want it to be cool, we want it to be celebrated by the people that live here, and we just don't know if we have the best idea yet. We like our inspirational imagery. We live in an area where there's really, 2 seasons, road trips, all that, but I mean, how it's not going to be a 4-season place right now. Could it be? Should it be? So we don't know, but we're willing to devote more time and energy to that, and we're receptive to ideas too. In fact, part of the reason why we feel we're so confident in what we've done is because the neighbors have their fingerprints on it. I mean, they've reacted to what we're proposing. And we really don't have tremendous pride of authorship here. We like good ideas. So thank you for those questions.
Okay, and then you're asking for a variation in the height restrictions, and that's strictly, probably in the packet, strictly related to the elevator?
But my understanding is it's actually related to the existing
Current height,
building,
yeah.
But it's because it's
Oh,
not
okay.
conforming, we technically have to ask for a variance for height because we're utilizing the existing structure.
Okay,
Did I get that right?
Yeah. okay. Yeah, I've got no more questions that will not be asked.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Jim. Julie?
I was at the first neighbor meeting, and thank you so much for meeting with the neighbors so well in advance and listening to their feedback and their concerns. I had a question about age restricted, which I believe you answered. Could you talk a little bit about Second Street, about how that's going to change?
Yes, I'd be happy to. but are you talking about directionally?
Yes.
Okay. Before I go to that, there are non-conforming parking spaces on the north side of Second Street in front of
Right.
Zion School that were probably paved when Chris was in diapers with somebody else. Those go away. You now have right-of-way that's manicured, landscape, tree planting. I'm towing around Second Street because I was asked to not try to avoid making it an issue by our village board. But at the neighborhood meeting, there was contemplation of the potential for converting Second Street from a one-way to a two-way street. The concern about attaching that adjustment to this project is that that could be controversial on its own. And so the perceived potential controversial nature of this project to begin with, we were encouraged to not couple this project with any adjustment to traffic. What I will share, and I have to because you asked about it and you were there, was that it does appear that the neighbors almost unanimously would like to see a return of Second Street from one-way to two-way. And there's a variety of reasons why, and it dealt with safety, it dealt with convenience, and it also dealt with obsolescence for the need for this one-way, that it was originally for drop-off when you had 200 kids, and now we don't. So that's it.
I know sometimes that the streets along there, like when St. Isaac gets out, traffic's rather heavy. Has there been any talks about putting a, like a stop sign out on, is that Grant Street in Second?
Grand Second would be the intersection on the
Top of the
east
hill,
of
right.
the site plan. I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, we're totally all ears on ways
Okay.
to improve safety.
Not a four-way.
Not a four, yeah.
It's just
I know
two-way.
sometimes like when there's like a lot of snow, it's hard to see,
Yeah.
to get across there, especially like during rush hour traffic.
Sure.
And there's a lot of kids walking.
You know, I
Yes.
guess I would
A
refer
lot.
to Public Works and, you know,
Right.
we can probably easily look and see if we've had complaints or there's a sense that we need a four-way stop here. You're not going to find us resisting that or necessarily supporting that because I don't know that we have the experience.
We did, Drew, have a preliminary review by traffic consultant,
Right.
and there is a traffic memo.
Yes. Yeah, they recommended converting it to two-way.
They did, okay. And that's our engineer, is that Callaway?
Yeah, Callaway.
I feel like I was on this commission when it was converted to one-way. You know, but for school, it's much more common around schools because you have
Yeah, it
a
is.
huge drop-off and pick-up traffic, and you have crossing guards, and it's a whole different scenario.
There's just a lot going on
Right.
there. It's, okay, thank you for answering that question. Now, there's going to be screens on the top of the building to hide any mechanicals?
Yeah.
Yes, we would comply with the screening requirements for all of the mechanicals on top. So that's, the bottom from the rear is really where you can see them more. The parapet wall really goes around the 3 front sides. So the back is really where you can see them. And they're typically pretty high. But yeah.
The back meaning from north looking south?
Yeah.
From north looking south.
That's kind of
Be
a
hard to
whatever
see, yeah.
angle to
Yeah.
me. I mean, I don't mean to diminish the neighbor in any way, but it's a parking lot. These are office buildings, former residences converted to office. And, there's not much to be desired back there at this point, but I think the right answer is yes, we screen. We don't want you to see mechanical units. I don't think you let us.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they are pretty high parapet walls currently that, like I said, mostly will serve to screen, what's there.
Great. One more question. So that you think the dog run will be out?
No, I don't actually. I mean, we had somebody after the village board presentation say people aren't going to use it because everybody walks their dogs on the sidewalks here. And actually, I tend to agree. On our TOD projects, we devote a lot of space to pet spas. And we have dog runs with permeable turf that are irrigated and then all the business runs away. And so it's this embrace of love for animals that has sort of made its way into our projects that I think has allowed it to become sort of a cornerstone of our programming. It's not going away. unless we come up with a better vision for the eastern portion of the site. Now, I actually really do like what we're planning there. I think it would work well. So no, not going away at this time.
I guess my concern would just be a lot of barking.
Would be what?
A lot of barking.
Well, you're in a much more of a residential setting than some of your TOD projects. So,
Absolutely.
you know, people walk their dogs around the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Or to go to Catherine Legge or whatever.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mark?
All right, just to follow on the two-way street, if you're trying to decouple from talking about that, one of your renderings does show two-way. So just point that out real quick. So I did have a question. Yes. So I noticed that earlier. So guest parking, I did have a question about that. So I was recently at one of the businesses on Grant, and they complained about the condo people having guests taking their spots for business along the street, things like that. And so I know you said you have, is it just those 3 outdoor spots that you have as guest parking, or where?
Yes,
Is that a-
so currently it's 3. You know, there's homes in Hinsdale where there's none right now, and in my house included. So I have to call up and I get a temporary pass overnight.
Right.
I'm thrilled that we have 3.
Mhm.
You know, there are ways that we could look at having additional parking on Second Street, though we don't need it. I actually think it's the right number. I think we're gonna be comfortable, and where it's gonna probably have a problem would be, you know, Christmas, when everybody's gone, but these folks are, you know, maybe perhaps not as mobile. And they're gonna know their neighbor, and so could we park in your spot over the weekend? That really does happen. So I'm not really worried about it, but I appreciate why you're bringing it up.
Yeah, no, and again, it was just happenstance that somebody
Yeah.
mentioned that to me 2 weeks ago. So, then as far as the park, so the public park on the west side, is that going to be HOA responsibility to maintain? or-
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, so it would be the HOA's responsibility to maintain. It would have sort of 2 paths, so you'd have a path off of Vine running due east. You'd have a path off of Second at the southwest corner of the building running north with, you know, an artistic element in the middle. And yes, it'd be maintained, and it'd clearly be a place anybody could go and, you know, sit down and enjoy themselves. And we'd probably put poop bags out there, you know, just out of convenience, and maybe a little trash. But yes, we would maintain it in perpetuity.
yeah, the only thing, you know, what I think about is the ability of people to understand that's there for them
Yeah.
to enjoy as the public. I mean, I don't know if I'd go, if there's an apartment or a condo building, I don't know if I'd just go sit and hang out in a place if I thought it was associated with the building itself.
You would do that, right? One
Right.
idea that you just gave me, and I'm realizing pastors here, is maybe this could be a gift from Zion Church.
Right.
Via the HOA to the community. And it says, you know, gifted by Zion to the community of Hinsdale, and it wraps whatever element we put in the center of it. I think there's ways that we could sort of cleverly allow people to understand that this really is for your consumption.
Right. I think that I would like something like that, just so
And maybe
people
we
know.
could, again, pay homage to the church and this great building that is adorned in this corner for so many years, over 90 years.
Okay. No, I appreciate that.
Mark, before you give up, is drainage at issue in this discussion? or-
That was my next
Oh,
question.
go
So you
ahead.
mentioned
I
a
wanna
couple
make
of times that it's in the floodplain. Is it in the, like, I didn't get a chance to look at the insurance study. Is it in the 100-year floodplain? Or is that, are we just using a figure of
Yeah,
speech?
go ahead.
It is in the floodplain. The issue with it is that there are openings that are slightly below base flood elevation, but they're easily adjusted. And part of the project will be to do that. So it's really just raising a step, adding a step as you're coming into the building. And then the opening that we're gonna, well, first of all, all the openings that are at the lower level of the building, it's gonna be now the garage, all those will be sealed
Okay.
and, you know, covered masonry enclosed. And then the ramp that goes down to create the entrance for the cars to pull into that level. The ramp will have, I'll use the word berm, but it's not gonna look like a berm, it'll just have a little,
Up first.
You're right.
at the edge of the property that will tie in to the grading of the property, to tie into the grade at the step to get into the entrance. That'll all be above the base flood elevation.
So-
That's how it'll be engineered.
Okay.
And we went to DuPage County, got permission from them, or direction from them, as to how we could use the lower level. We couldn't use the lower level for dwelling. It's used now for it was, for classroom space, but current code, you wouldn't be able to do that. So, but we can't park cars there, we can't have any other uses down there.
Okay.
Per se, any kind of function of the building really can't be down there.
So will you be able to do like a letter of map amendment, so you don't, these people don't have to pay flood insurance, or are they gonna be required to pay flood insurance?
I suppose that we would, as it relates to the grading that I just described, we would. Their units are well above.
Right, I'm just saying from an HOA perspective of having to pay.
So I'd have to research that question, ask our engineer.
Okay,
About the answer to that question, we can get back to you, but I think there would be a minor modification to it.
Okay.
By our grading plan.
okay.
Thanks, Mike. I'm just going to add to that. When we first started exploring this project, we were like, there's something that's going to blow up on us. And we initially thought it would be being in the floodplain. And that's why our first stop was really the DuPage County Stormwater. We got all those folks in a room, and the objective is presented by the DuPage County board member who helped us set up the meeting was how do we save this building?
Right.
And it's actually like 2 inches of ramping gets us above the VFD. Where we're filling it in, it will be brick to match the existing structure, so we're trying to not draw attention to it. And you have an elevator going down there, Mike. It's not that you, my understanding was the mechanicals, like we could have electric vehicle charging stations, but they have to be above a certain height, so they might feel a little weird, right? They're up here, but we're trying to adhere to sort of that base flood elevation, and not have mechanical equipment below that.
Okay, yeah, no, that's helpful. That's all the stuff I was thinking about when I kept hearing floodplain, and then subgrade electric car storage.
You know, we have some work to do, and understanding, is this going to be something that comes up if somebody's trying to get a mortgage, and
You're right.
you know, how it affects their homeowner's
Yeah.
insurance. So there are things for sure that we don't know
Right.
right now, and that we're going to have to get better educated.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Then just my last question, I feel like I'm dominating. So I know there's mention, are the dumpsters also going in the basement, or in the garage? Or is
You
that?
want to talk trash handling?
Yes, we would have a trash room down in the basement. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right to the left as you turn in that garage.
Go ahead. Right by the stair.
Yeah.
So then they roll them out to the.
Yeah, so the plan would be the garbage truck could get off the street, back down the ramp. They could roll out the dumpsters, throw them out in the garbage truck.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Steve.
Okay. Anna?
It's a beautiful building. It looks great. I know so many people will be so excited that you're preserving this facade. It's going to be great. The village board asked us to look at 3 things, presumably. One specifically being the age restriction, and I know it seems like that's kind of agreed upon, but I just wanted to go on the record stating that I think that's putting undue pressure on the development, making it 55 plus restricted. Right now, the market, yes, they'll sell immediately. It'll be gone in a second, but I've been around long enough where that's not always the case, and I think having it's 12 units. I do not think that's going to put any pressure on our schools whatsoever, and if the HOA puts rules into the bylaws or whatnot, like we did at Hinsdale Meadows, I just don't see it being an issue. I don't think it's going to be your issue. I think it's going to be my issue as a realtor having to resell these one day and making them 55 plus. So it's a little on the selfish side, I guess, but I think for the village as a whole, we shouldn't do that. I think the Clay townhomes over by Kramer's and Hinsdale Meadows, those aren't restricted, and that's never really been a huge issue since I've lived here at least. I know that the village has a strong opinion on that, the board, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents on that one. So I don't know if you have a strong preference on that.
So I'm pleased, really, thank you for bringing that up. This kind of falls in the unnecessary handcuffs category. And I think it's really probably trying to get in front of the potential of children living in this building, which would almost certainly never happen. I mean, even at this price point, my sense is that there are single-family homes that are sub 700,000. I moved into one in a starter home that was, 30% less than that when I first moved to Hinsdale. And so this just wouldn't be your first stopping point. It doesn't make sense. It's not how families live. In our other TOD projects, it's sort of really 2 demographics. It's your millennials or your pre-household formation. So they're singles, they're professionals, maybe they're engaged. If the minute they have a baby, they're out. They just don't want to live there. And so I just can't imagine. Now, I do think you're limiting, unfortunately, divorcee population where there's family disruption. And this might be a logical place for dad to move. I also think it could create some consternation on the part of a buyer knowing that their buyer pool is eventually limited. But you know what? We're trying to be agreeable because our eye is on the prize of identifying a path to salvaging the Zion School. And so, if that's going to be the major issue, I would roll over on it. But I'm pleased that professionally you offered that opinion because I totally agree with you. I don't think you're going to have an issue with under 55 wanting to live here. And then it creates some weird concerns, like, for example, if mom is getting older and son and he's 48 and he wants to live here, and now you got a neighbor calling on the neighbor, and where mom passes away and son's still there, it does to me actually create more potential down the road for issues, but I don't want to stick my neck out on it. And so I don't know how to navigate that other than being able to reference that one of our plan commissioners brought this up and question sort of the underlying thought. And I genuinely appreciate you bringing that up.
Scott?
The beauty of going last and being new. I just have a couple of questions, and first of all, I do like it. We've talked about all 3 sides outside. What about the north side that's going to run along the fence? What are your plans on that and fencing that area in, and what's that going to look like for the neighbors?
Right, so we do have, that probably gets the most windows added to it, to be honest with you. It's the bottom elevation you see there. And you saw before what that looked like, but it's pretty bad. So,
Would you go to the one that shows it?
yes. So that bottom right.
Bottom left to me is perhaps the most informing.
Right.
I mean, it's a lot of gutters right now, no penetrations. It's a little dialed down brick. You're not getting that red brick, but I still think it's a nice brick. But I think this does need some thought. For us, we kind of want the building to sort of stop here, and maybe this gets grass and sort of becomes, maybe there's an agreement with the neighbor or we're mowing that strip. I don't think you need the sidewalk there anymore. Can you talk to the interact? Go ahead.
Yeah, so currently we have a fence,
Right.
a wood
Right,
fence that will go from that corner Drew was just pointing to the lot line, and then all the way down the lot line to kind of break the neighbor's view of, that whole side there. And then, like I said, we would be opening up a lot more openings of glass, and then there are a couple of balconies that will stick out that way.
Right.
The plan is to put trees, shrubs, along the fence line to add additional screening. I believe there's something in the code about you have to have stone or something there, is that right? In that side yard.
I believe you need some sort of
I think that was-
landscaping. but-
It is dictated in your code that has to be landscaped.
Right.
And in our landscape plan, there is, the beginnings of our thoughts on how to address. Right. So that is the plan, is really to have a wood fence that would block the view along with, you know, shrubs and then a revamped elevation.
And there's there is a stairwell, Chris pointed out, on the north side that we would be removing and filling in with brick.
Yeah.
So right now, there's actually ingress, egress out on that part of the site.
Now, the brick on that side is the common brick.
Right.
So it is a different color. Right now, there is no plan to swap out all of that brick and match the
Right.
entire elevation, but we would match the existing brick.
Right.
You know, that way. But this is, you know, this is just how we look for it, because the backside is always.
I think it'll look great with that.
Yeah.
It needs a bath.
Yeah.
So cleaning and tuck pointing, all that on
Yes,
that, okay.
that's right.
I think you might have found your dog run too, by the way. Right. The second thing that I'm looking at is on the east elevation, where this, I know we can't, you're not looking at the stained glass. The stained glass is on the left-hand side of that element. Can windows be put in there into that stairwell area to try and,
We did,
Yeah,
we got
there.
this feedback late, but there is an opportunity. So the first portion of that is the stairwell.
right,
And we already have, like you said, the stained glass on the one side, but we do have the end of that hallway. So we're talking about, we could probably add windows into that hallway.
just to kind of make it, you know,
Yeah.
not quite as flat and liven it up a little bit.
However, perhaps at the end of this hallway here, Chris,
Yeah, that's
and
what
then
I'm
you'd have light coming in, that
Yeah.
would be.
So right here, I think there is an opportunity to add some more windows.
And there as well, right.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, so possibly, you know, it's harder in the stairwell with just fire codes and things like that. We'd rather stay away from that, but I think there's definitely an opportunity. The other thing we can look at is maybe, you know, is there metalwork or something that we could add to the building, maybe vines or, you know, some
Yeah.
sort of landscaping or something like that.
Will there be a sprinkler system for all the outside landscaping and all of that?
Yeah, we would have an irrigation system.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Could I just ask a brick question?
Yeah.
Have you looked at staining the brick?
That is a possibility. I mean, there's some great companies that do that.
Okay.
You know, it's something that we can definitely look at. Yes, but like I said, currently that's, you know, yeah. that's-
It's not very visible. It almost looks like they plan for a future expansion or something, why they would put common brick on that side.
Yes.
The building that, the north of there is so close, it's really
Yeah.
Right.
not that
It is.
noticeable.
You're right. Why don't you give us a chance to think about this and talk to some masonry experts? And, you know, we may come back and say, we really think that brick should stay. And perhaps there's a staining approach, perhaps we put a new skin on it, but we'll look at that.
First, I really like the concept. I think it's fantastic to take, you know, this historic building and to repurpose it. I think it's great for the environment. I do think it's unique for this type of housing in Hinsdale. You know, it's not right in the downtown. It's very close. It's close to Grant Square. I could really see the attractiveness of that. It was interesting, Anna's comment about the age targeted versus age restricted. I'm pretty sure the initial package we saw, it was described as age targeted, and that was before you met with the board, and then you went to age restricted, but I think maybe the commissioners, we can talk about that separately. Couple things. There was one little typo, I think I told you, was kind of throwing me off because it said you needed 28 parking spaces, which really should have been 18, and then you were providing 25 and it complied. I'm like, well, that's interesting how it complies, and then I realized it was just a typo. There was one comment about the width of the parking, and, you know, this, I mean, I lived in a building like this where you do get to know your parking spaces, and especially when you're paying for them. And, you know, a typical residential garage door for 2 cars is 16 feet wide. You know, I think if you can't make it work, I think you're going to be fine. And, you know, it's just a matter of structure and what you can accomplish there. But I don't really have a problem with that. I think if you end up somewhere between 8 and 9, it's fine. I'm pretty sure when we had the District 86 in the high school, we reduced the width of the parking spaces there because schools typically, since you're coming in one time and leaving at the end of the day, you can also go with smaller parking spaces of width. So I don't really have a concern on that item. The comment, there's a thing in here about the pocket park, and it's like you're really close, you're off by like maybe 300 feet, but I think it's close enough. And I do like, I mean, we have pocket parks around town, Hinsdale Meadows, they put in, what, 2 at least, I think? I think there's 2 there. And I do think it would be a nice amenity to that neighborhood. I'm not sure, just envisioning myself living there, I don't know what that east parcel really needs to be. I like the visuals and the idea of having space for these people. I don't know that we need swing sets and things like that. But I'm comfortable with the pocket park you show. If the neighbors really had an issue or looking for more park space, that would be one thing, but I defer to the neighbors. I think when we get to further down the road, illumination exterior would be kind of crucial. I like the aesthetic, but I would really want to look at it from the neighbor's point of view because even though I think it's important to highlight some of those details, I also don't want it glowing for the neighbors, because it's fairly dark and subdued there in that neighborhood. It's a nice neighborhood. So parking space size we talked about, open space. The area they have with the English garden wall, which I really like that concept. I do think, even though you require variation to create that space, I think it's important because you need to have some space like that beyond a balcony. And I think that's very tastefully done. I think it actually ties in really well with the architecture of the building, and you're really not projecting any more to the south than the existing building currently is. So I think it even, the way you're showing it, I really like the detailing you're showing. I think it would actually look like it was always there. And, I do think, the neighbors should have a spot like that. You basically would be across the street from the backyard of that house that's being renovated, and I could see them having their, fire pit back there and putting outside TV and everything. So I think it fits in with the residential nature of the neighborhood. So I do think that pocket park is a nice public benefit. There was one question in here, I think it was from staff, but it was about the existing plan development and whether these modifications we're talking about related to that, whether that's considered substantial conformity, like the change. I think this is kind of beyond that. Even though I know it's more paperwork and jumping through some hoops, it'd be one thing if we were just making some slight modification to the PUD, but I mean, we're changing FAR, everything to the good, but we're changed a bunch of things. So I think my intention would be to go with the staff's recommendation that is a little bit beyond a minor modification. But it was interesting historically looking at all the things we did with Lutheran Church was the same thing when we basically had to create all these variances because it's an existing historic building from the 19th teens, and there was no zoning code back then. It was like try to keep it on your property, you don't build in the street. So it all makes sense to me. And with that, those are all the comments I had. I really think you did a great job on the packet. It was very informative, very well, a lot of detail, which we always appreciate as commissioners. And with that, I'd really like to hear if there's anyone in the audience, any community members that would like to speak on this matter. Yes, sir? If you can come up here and just tell us your name, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Hines, H-E-I-N-Z, and I live at 116 South Pine Street. So I'm across from the buildings,
Okay.
the homes that have been converted into offices.
Okay.
I've lived there for 44 years now, and we raised our children there. And I remember when it was a school too. The dropping off in the morning was something we hardly noticed at all. Of course, we were getting our own kids to school and stuff was going off to work, but now I'm retired and I can sit around and look out my window and see, really check it out. See what's going on. First of all, Mr. Mitchell and Holiday Properties have come up with a beautiful building. I love it, and I would happily look across the street at that rather than the school that's there now. I have two concerns, and they've both been addressed to some extent. parking, not so much traffic, but parking, and the floodplain. So with the parking, when we moved in, it was called a buffer zone, and those 4 homes converted were offices that had to be low traffic generating. So they were a lawyer's office and an architect. Things you hardly noticed if they were having customers at all. As things changed and they were bought and turned into other businesses, at one point the village required them to pave behind the building so that their customers could park there and not be on Vine Street. So they all have done that. However, in a couple cases, they've turned into parking for the people who work there, and the customers may or may not even know that they're allowed to park back there. But that's not, I don't know how to solve that. What happened though recently was the third building in has become a counseling center. There are, I believe, 24 counselors that work out of that office, having hour appointments that go all day long and into the evening on a couple days. So you have people coming and going every hour looking for parking, and there is almost always a full row of cars on that side of the street. There's a sign that says no parking here to corner that's no longer observed, and 2 to 3 hour parking. That's not bad because appointments are only an hour. But our side of the street is no parking.
Okay.
And that's what I want to make sure does not change. Mr. Mitchell used the term urban heartbeat, and that's the urban heartbeat I do not want. My daughter and her husband
Where you have to do dibs.
I know what it's like to just live with cars parked on both sides of your street. And that's not why we moved to Hinsdale. So the street, it was originally no parking on that side of the street because of the school zone. But even after the school closed, it's remained that way.
Okay.
However, it used to say no parking this side of the street. For some reason, it changed to no parking. And there's one no parking sign in our neighbors on the left and 2 houses down on the right. But my yard doesn't have one. So there's people who come and park there because there's no room on the other side of the street. Well, since I'm retired and home all day long, I can go out there and say, excuse me,
Right.
but there's no parking on this side of the street. And, I always say, I wouldn't want you to get a ticket, But, so anyway, the point is, it's just become very, very busy. So anything that this building generates in terms of visitor parking with people that live there, for the people who live there, no longer will they have those diagonal spots that you're going to remove on
Right.
2nd Street. I just want to make sure that it doesn't become a place where there's parking allowed on both sides of the street. Because, now the lawn services, are there, and they'll park there because there's nowhere on the other side of the street to park. And it's very difficult to get through in this part.
It's a narrow
So
street.
I think I've made that point.
Okay.
But, so the 2 parking places per unit that they're recommending here, I'm just hoping that that's like almost a requirement. You have to use those spots. You can, because there's no overnight parking. Is there overnight parking on any streets?
No, not without contacting Village Hall and getting a
So,
waiver.
they can't have guests parking on the street. So,
Right.
anyway, that's one concern. The other concern is the flood zone, and I am in it. We have our house paid off, so I can no longer pay the insurance anymore. But when it rains heavily, that intersection of Vine Street and Hinsdale Avenue, water comes all the way up to my house. I'm the second house, not the corner house, but the second house, and it's come all the way up to my driveway. So anything that's, and that has gotten worse over the years. I don't know what's been redirected there or not, but it's gotten worse. So, you know, I know you are gonna deal with the drainage and but I mean, it seems like people always want to get it done so that it doesn't have any negative effect on anybody. But on the other hand, you never really know until it's done, and then all of a sudden the retention pond the neighbor put in, so their yard doesn't get wet anymore. Now your yard has a lake in it. True fact. But at any rate, so if there's anything that can be required of that to where no more water is directed onto Vine Street. I mean, I don't know where else it's gonna go, but you can't take any more water on Vine Street. So, those are the two concerns I have. I do think it's a beautiful building, and you're really doing a great job of restoring it. So, you know, I'm in favor of that, but those are my two concerns.
Good. Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? Ann? No? Just observing? Anyone else? Hearing? Oh, sure. You can come up. Sorry, we got to, people on home won't be able to hear you.
Ann Smith, and I live on 3rd Street, so I'm a block away. But same thing, I think most of the neighbors feel positively about the building being reused and resolved. Could you put parking on 2nd Street? So your guests would park in front of your house. You know, you've taken the parallel spots, but can't they just park on 2nd Street like they park on 3rd Street and 4th Street?
Yeah, I don't see why
On
not.
one side, usually it's on the
Yeah.
other side. If they could have, because I have to agree with Ken, the traffic now down across from Tom is pretty bad.
Is it the third building, the one closest to this building that has all the traffic? Is that the counseling building?
No.
Next to this building is this building that's just been restored.
Yeah, the dark one. Okay.
It's the yellow.
Oh, the next one over,
And
okay.
they have a full parking lot in their back.
Okay.
And I'm kind of interested why none of the parents, you know, maybe it's better for them to make their own little U-turn back there so people could park there and, again, maybe not enough space, but
Okay.
couldn't we put parking on 2nd?
Yeah.
On my way to this meeting tonight, I looked behind and there were 7 cars parked back there.
Well, I'm sure that
Right
there
now.
is probably parking.
Right there first, yeah.
But it's bigger than it looks, but.
I mean, I think what Ann's talking about is, couldn't we just have regular parallel parking?
Exactly.
And I think the answer is absolutely.
Right.
We could.
If you left it as a one-way street, of course you could put parallel parking probably on both sides. But if you're gonna make it a two-way, like I did like the rest of the streets, just.
Well, being neighbors, what are your thoughts about one-way versus two-way?
You know, I don't live on 2nd Street.
Yeah, I mean, Tom would have probably a good opinion on that.
Yeah, I do have an opinion.
Yeah.
I think actually it would be better as a two-way, because if you think of all those people, the 24 cars that are parked in the basement, if they come out to leave,
They all
and
gotta-
it's a one-way street, they have to turn right and come down my street.
Right, that's what I was
Whereas they can turn left and go down Branch Street.
Okay.
My only thought was if there is a preschool at the church, I don't know if that, and, you know, there's a pretty hefty,
Oh, with them dropping off in the back there?
they go through your parking lot.
Okay.
Stay off the street, but I didn't know that.
Thanks, Ann.
Okay.
Is there any thought about the church and the development making a parking arrangement? I don't know if Zion Lutheran has excess parking ever.
I promised Pastor if he came, we'd avoid trying to put him on the spot. What I'd like to do is just describe
Fellow
this
Lutheran.
with collaborative with, in other communities that could, so our Burlington Station project in downtown Downers Grove is adjacent to a metro lot, which is, those parking spots are really important from 7 to really 11 a.m. And after that point, they're really generally pretty flexible. And there could be a world where perhaps there's an annual donation to the church from the HOA, and on an occasional basis, there's an evening stay, and it occurs in their lot. You know, Pastor, perhaps you want to talk to Suzanne or somebody else, but I'd be reluctant to make you commit to anything today,
Right.
but our experience has been that you can be neighborly. And there are ways to just have conversations and kind of limit that, well, make the pie bigger would be a different way to say it. And it works. So That's it.
All right, thanks, Drew.
So back to the flooding point, is there an extensive sump pump system down there right now? I mean, does that building flood a lot?
I think that building is bone dry.
Okay.
So it really is. And I can't speak to the existing mechanical system. We know we're gonna have a ramp that, even though it has, to borrow Mike's word, a little berm at the front, it's gonna need a trench drain at the bottom.
Yeah.
Because some stuff's gonna melt, and then we're gonna need to move that out. I do think that where I'm disappointed, we said it's a 12% increase in permeable, because it's really going from 27% of site to 40, and that's almost a 50% increase. So I think the earth will accept more water here. I also think with this garden use, there'll be thirsty plants that are in there as well, versus what's really been mulch and
The playground.
and asphalt.
I would
So-
just say this is your specialty,
No, go
sorry, but when you start dealing with those where all that sump water is going to drain, just make sure not to put it onto the street. Just because I know I've dealt with so many low areas in Hinsdale where it's just it's
Only residential properties get away with that.
well, and it's the residential properties that put it to the street, and
I know.
that's So just a note.
This is actually my weakest part of my job, is when I get into stormwater and civil engineering, and Mike is an engineer, that's why he jumped up right away to help me on the VFP and raising that. So I don't know how to speak any further to that, other than,
I think we share all these comments with our civil engineer, who's gonna design,
Yeah.
Right.
100% set of engineering drawings.
And we'll look at all this again.
Well, the
right?
village will review it and the county,
Yeah.
but stormwater is pretty much, we leave it up to the village and the county. And DuPage is tough.
So, yeah, it'll be a lot more scrutiny,
Right.
continued scrutiny.
Right.
And the permeable, though, is pretty much the pocket park. That's the increase on the permeable.
well, it's coming
Also the
from that.
playground,
It's
yeah.
actually largely coming from
Parkway.
The Parkway?
disabled parking
Yeah.
spaces that are
Ah.
going away.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it as well. So,
And the parking lot.
Yeah.
and then, of course, the parking lot, but you're adding impermeable here at
Right.
the bottom of the ramp. And then this is pretty much and remains permeable, although the grade will change. And then, we can use permeable pavers here, which I think this is currently factoring into our impermeable calculation. We can use permeable materials there. So we're hearing this.
Yeah.
And I think we can just have smart design.
Yeah.
Right.
And even talk to the arborists about what trees will suck up the most water, because that can really help out a lot. I am reluctant, Mike's gonna kill me, but, well, Mike hates when I say that too. I feel like there's a way you could put a vault in, and this is money, right?
Right.
I mean, and now you're telling me how to spend money, but, maybe a vault could go back here, and it's a collaboration with Public Works, and it sits back here, and we put something over it, and.
Well, I was wondering, when you talk about raising those, like the entries and stuff, will you need compensatory storage to offset that with the county? Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about.
I know it's pretty small and you might be under the threshold, but if you cross the threshold, then you'd have to add something.
And that intersection, as Mr. Hines mentioned, I've seen cars actually flood out, try to drive through. So it's a major problem.
Well, and that's what I was just going to mention. I mean, obviously, turning it permeable is great, but like, it sounds like a regional issue that we're dealing with here. So the more you can make that functional storage, like, could you make the Parkway, some type of bioretention system or something like that? That's still not going to help, it sounds like, with the events we're dealing with. But
Yeah.
I'd explore the vaults too. I'm not trying to spend your money, but anything that you could help to.
Comes with it being the oldest part of town.
It does, absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Is this combined
It's low.
sewer? Is this portion of the combined sewer? Is this combined sewer area? I can't.
I'm not sure.
I can't
I'm sure there's still plenty over
remember.
there.
They always have on the streets over there, like the dancing, like storm sewer
Yeah.
caps that during,
Dancing.
be like a fountain.
The entire site is in floodplain.
Yeah, just the low corner.
It's the low corner, okay.
I also just wonder aloud, Mr. Hines' comment on, well, where are these businesses parking? And then all of a sudden we have gravel lots that are getting paved. that are further aggravating the problem. And so, we gotta be careful about making this building solve all of the neighborhood issues.
I agree with that.
True.
Yeah.
But we are willing to
Yeah.
figure out,
Can't
try
make
to identify ways that we can help. And certainly, what I'm pleased about is, one, we're saving this structure. I do want to react quickly to the comment, your appreciation of this residential amenity in front of our building. It's really important, we think, to our residents to have that space. And we were concerned that somehow that may die on the vine and actually affect the utility and function of these units. So I appreciate you mentioning that. So it's saving the building, not adding to the storm problem. And
Right.
so I'm very pleased that we've identified a way to increase the amount of permeable surface by 40%. And we're willing to continue to look at ways to further improve this localized situation here as
Yeah.
it relates to stormwater.
Yeah, on that note, sorry, I keep dominating here, but, I think the comment was made, this is the oldest part of Hinsdale, and this is part of what comes with territory. Well, we have to take these opportunities, like yourself, coming in, great opportunity, to try to do some retrofits to solve those known problems, and that's how you chip away at it in time. And I know we don't incentivize that through ordinances, things like that, but that's just my opinion, is to look for those opportunities to start dealing with some of these flood
Good
problems.
planning.
Yeah.
That's good planning.
Right.
We understand that. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Drew. So Commissioners, one thing I did want to just hear you chime in on is this age targeted versus age restricted. I mean, Anna, brought that point up, but I'd be curious, what your thoughts are. Maybe Scott, you want to start with that? Because it's an interesting point, not only now, but for, future resale. Hinsdale Meadows, that was age targeted, and that, I know people have moved in there and they're not moving in there with families. And I would think the same thing. I have a friend who lives in downtown Downers. I don't know if it's in your building. I'm trying to remember what hers is called, but you described it perfectly. It's either really young people with no kids, or it's divorcees or whatever, people that are retired, and you don't see kids. There's not strollers bouncing around the building. It's just a different mindset. It's a different target audience.
Would this be the only age-restricted set of units in Hinsdale? Because as you mentioned, Hinsdale Meadows, we went down this road and through the HOA and bylaw
Eliminated that.
restrictions, no swing sets, no
Right.
basketball courts.
And Passero's one on Lincoln, I don't remember what that was, but that's not restricted either. So, yeah, I mean, different audience.
One unit reserved for medical care.
So what are your thoughts, Scott?
I can see both sides. I mean, I can see why, it's property rights and you're owning it. It's a condo. It's not like it's a retail, or a rental place. So targeting that does affect resale. I think it goes to your point, Anna. It does. And so I look at that, and then I look at, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry.
New guy.
I'm the new guy. So I think a little bit further, though. I understand what the objective of the project is, and I understand where you guys are trying to go. The question is, do we want to codify? And again, the handcuff situation goes on. So I think I'd probably lean away from restricting it and probably target it. And I think the way you finish the units, the way you put this together will also be a guidance as far as that is concerned as well. So there are some things that I'm sure you're thinking of that you would probably put into it that would also have a draw to it to particular age groups.
That's a good point. And when we did Hinsdale Meadows, when we got to the detailed approval, we were into the language of the HOA and everything to try to make sure that it delivered what we wanted.
Yep.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. I like maybe the targeted, but I don't like the restricted. I don't like dictating the market value of these units through what we're doing. I think what we did on Hinsdale Meadows, through looking at the covenants, through the HOA agreement, I think that's the way you limit what you don't want. So that's my opinion.
Julie?
I would like to see some data on that. I would like to see how many children are living in Hinsdale Meadows And I'd also like is like a comparison, maybe some of the new condo developments in downtown Clarendon Hills. Because I can see it both ways. But we do have to think of our schools too.
I know, I thought when we asked the schools in the past, they were pretty non-committal. I don't think they wanted to get a horse in the race.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it possible to get that information somehow, Bethany, or?
We did about a year ago when we started talking with Holiday Properties, contacted Hinsdale Meadows, and they were still not fully built out, but I do remember them saying there were very few children there. We can once again ask them. I don't know if they're keeping that information now that the properties have sold,
Right.
but we can see if they do have that.
Okay.
Even anecdotal.
I just think where, like, for example, Briarwood Lakes, where there's hundreds of units, right? That makes total sense to be 55 and older, because that would they would have to build a new school.
Right.
But this is 12 units. I just,
Right.
That's true.
you know?
Right. I mean, you could have, if there are 2 houses here, you could carry a bunch of kids. All right, Jim?
I don't like age restrictions either. I think we did a very nice job with Hinsdale Meadows. What's been your experience at Burlington Station? I know it's not exactly the same, but
So it's a 94-unit building, so it's roughly 8 times larger. We, to my knowledge, have had no net new children to the school district, which is important because there's a tip and there's calculations that go into that. I do know that we have a divorced dad who has 2 children who visit. So our experience has been, there are virtually none. And I think the reason why is that these products actually, kind of, to some points that were made, are not really designed for that lifestyle. And if you were pursuing that life, there's a better value out there in this particular product, which it's not just, a condo, there's HOA fees that are also going towards the upkeep. And so the perception is that this isn't a value relative to what else is out there. We have a really cool project on a tricky to develop site that's starting in August of this year in downtown Glen Ellen. And we're a very challenging community to entitle it. And we were willing to make an agreement that we would pay the school district $16,000 per student for any student that moves into our building, which if you're getting $2,000 a unit, it's just $24,000 a year. It would take all the fun out. So we're putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, by making that commitment. The last thing came out of our second neighborhood meeting, which was a comment that if a grandparent lives here and their grandson or daughter were to visit for the summer, would the neighbors start calling? And I was flat-footed on that. And so I wonder if the intent is sort of misinformed, which is that we don't want young families here, or we're trying to prevent difficult dialogue perhaps with the school district. And to me, it's just, it's probably over-engineering a response to something that really is a non-issue and could have unintended consequences.
yeah. Julie, you're the closest person to taking the other side of this, I think. What is the other side? You mentioned a study or information or experience about the schools. Is there anything else about the neighborhood or anything that we don't want children around? Because
No, I think it'd be.
I don't want
concerned
to turn
about-
into.
Most of the big concern is about Central.
Right.
Because Central has, 2,800 students, South has 1,400. And I think it's really on the high school level where it's the biggest issue.
Well, that's
versus like K-8.
so your question is right on the point. And when Hinsdale Meadows came around, there were statistics, there was information, but is the school showing up? This is only a 12-unit development. I don't want to make a precedent, so if somebody comes in with a 300-unit place, I'm sure they'd get a different reception.
Yeah, correct.
But I guess I don't see the other side of it if this type of place is not encouraging to young families. Oh, I remember. We were thinking, okay, the affordability, because that's a pretty affordable joint. might attract somebody who wants to just put their kid in the school.
It could be just a onesie-twosie thing. Who knows?
Welcome to Hinsdale, I guess.
That's why I'd like to see some data. Years ago, I believed in Central had to start doing, like when you registered, you had to show proof because so many
Yeah, right, we're cheeking.
were sneaking in, or they move here, just for the high school, which is fine. I mean, you might be surprised. I would just like to see some data, maybe from
I think if
Hinsdale
you look if
Meadows.
you look back to the Hinsdale Meadows package, there's some, it was a discussion, I mean, that took a year and a half, I think. So there's plenty of discussion, but you can see, you'll probably find some information in there, and it would just be helpful to have.
I would like to offer something. So, there's Foxford Station, which is pretty tasteful development in downtown Western Springs. It would be considered a comp to this in some respect, it's walkable. Why don't you let us try to identify how many, we're in touch with folks in Western Springs. So let us try to identify if there's any school children there. The second suggestion was the downtown Clarendon. There's a 14-unit development at Prospect and Park, and we know the developer. Let us inquire about
Thank
the
you.
number of school
That'd be good.
children.
Because that's District 86. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm looking
You're
for.
right. And I think
Okay.
that would inform the board perhaps more than even what occurred.
Yes.
Yeah, these questions might help you better with that group. They're the handcuff group. We have some handcuffs, but the
I'm
other,
actually so encouraged that this came up, and I don't mean to present ourselves as sheepish, but we didn't want to fall on our sword on this topic, and we vehemently disagree with the underlying rationale. And, but we don't want to fall on our sword. So I think the
We still do
data,
the project with that
Yeah.
restriction.
right.
Well, and this is a public meeting, and the
Yeah.
representatives of District 86 and 181 had the opportunity to show up
Right.
and make comments. So I think their Clarendon Hills
That would be good.
development would be useful information, and anecdotally,
Yeah, maybe Hinsdale Meadows.
somebody
with,
I know who
James
lives in there
Builders.
Yes.
the
is a
last
divorced
thing is that
father.
we know what great schools we have here, right? It's creating probably, that's the underlying
Right.
reason for this conversation is people want their children to go to Hinsdale schools.
Right.
And I would just say if there were gamesmanship around that, I don't view this building as part of that. I think that there are apartments that can be rented in town that are much more affordable. That would be a more logical way to game the
Right.
system.
Yeah.
And there's home rentals that are available. That would be a much more likely way to game the system than actually buying a $750,000 condominium building.
I mean, I think those apartments across that are not in Hinsdale, but in, DuPage County, across,
Right.
I mean, that's a smart place to move if you want to get your kids in District 86.
And we've all seen that.
Yeah, and they're always full. They've been doing just fine there.
Well, your comment was that, be prepared to be able to address
Yeah,
this.
yeah, I
the
think to
information
Julie's
and-
point.
and Julie's comment on the data, and I think that we can do a better job of harvesting some of that and being able to speak to it.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Cynthia?
You've answered everything. That was, I agree with Julie, just have a little more information, be
And I-
ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I'd hate to see a grandparent who's living there who wants to have their child come and spend a month during the summer be restricted from doing that. However, you might not want to have someone with 5 kids living next door, so I think to take a look at that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, other thoughts, comments? Okay, so we have basically text amendment, plan development concept plan, special use permit. So on all these, are these in a conceptual level, or is it just the plan development that's a conceptual level?
So
Bethany.
it is just the plan development that's
Okay.
conceptual level, but they will be grouped into an ordinance, and
Okay.
they will be conditioned on future approvals. So that those future approvals are the detailed plan
Right.
that will come back to everyone for future review. The final plan is administrative after that. Also, there'll be a plat of subdivision to allow for that property line to be moved over.
Okay.
And then as part of that map amendment to rezone the property. And then the final exterior appearance and site plan review. So those will be done later when it comes back, but this approval now would be null and void without those in the future.
Okay.
The
So
one
it's-
other approval for right now, though, is that major adjustment to the existing plan development.
So the first one on text amendment, this is basically adding this use as a special use to the O1.
Correct.
Which, when you look at the zoning map and the idea of this going from a institutional use to something else, I mean, just seems to make a lot of sense to me, and I don't know if any commissioners have an issue with that, but that seems to make a lot of sense. The plan development concept plan, I think, like we've expressed, I think everyone, and we'll ask for a motion on this, but I think everyone likes the concept, and I think the devil will be in the details, but so far, it seems like the details are things that hopefully can be worked out. The age restricted, I mean, that's really ultimately going to come to the board, but we can maybe add a comment or recommendation of our thoughts on that. And then the special use permit is something we can talk about. And then the final one, I made a comment earlier, but, I mean, not to make you jump through a lot more hoops, but I do think it's a pretty, this would be on page 8 of Bethany's memorandum. And I do think it's a pretty, you know, we've had some other, I mean, there's issues come up with us administratively on minor changes to plan developments, and I just think this is significant enough that what the staff is recommending, I think we should follow, versus, I just think it creates, this could actually create issues in the future on other plan developments if we looked at this as being like minor. You know, because we're actually changing the map, we're changing, you know, the uses of property, we're changing FAR, which helps the church out. I just think this is just a bridge too far, so that would be my thought on that.
So
item.
would this require a map amendment too, Steve?
A map amendment would happen in the future.
In the future.
That would happen in the future?
Yep,
So
so
this
that's-
would be, okay.
That's for future consideration, and the reason we can't do that map amendment right now to rezone the property is because we technically do the subdivision with
Yeah.
the detailed plan. So it actually has to push the entire rezoning back.
Right.
We don't
Okay.
have the property created yet to actually rezone it,
Right.
if that
Okay.
makes sense.
So I guess
Thank
let's
you.
start with, do I have a motion to approve the text amendment as submitted, to add this lifestyle housing as a special use to the O1 district?
So moved, Willoughby?
Second, Cernovich?
May we have a roll call vote, please, Bethany?
Commissioner Curry?
Aye.
Commissioner Krillenberger?
Aye?
Commissioner Cernovich?
Aye.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Aye.
Commissioner Fiasconi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Chairman Cashman?
Aye. Next, for the plan development concept plan, do I have a motion to approve the concept plan with the suggestion that it be modified to age-targeted versus age-restricted?
Krillenberger, so motions.
Do I have a second?
Second, Curry?
May we have a roll call vote, please, Bethany?
Commissioner Curry?
Aye.
Commissioner Krillenberger?
Aye?
Commissioner Cernovich?
Aye.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Aye.
Commissioner Fiasconi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Chairman Cashman?
Aye. And then third, do I have a motion to approve the special use permit to allow for development of Vine Street Station consisting of 12 age-targeted lifestyle housing units as submitted?
So moved, Cernovich?
Second, Willoughby?
Roll call vote, please, Bethany?
Commissioner Curry?
Aye.
Commissioner Krillenberger?
Aye?
Commissioner Cernovich?
Aye.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Aye.
Commissioner Fiasconi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Chairman Cashman?
Aye. And then I guess the fourth would be to follow the staff's recommendation that this would be a major adjustment to the Zion Lutheran Church plan development, and that would not be within substantial conformity with the approved plans.
So moved, Willoughby?
There's a second?
Cernovich?
Roll call, please, Bethany?
Commissioner Curry?
Aye.
Commissioner Krillenberger?
Aye?
Commissioner Cernovich?
Aye.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Aye.
Commissioner Fiasconi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Chairman Cashman?
Aye. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Krillenberger, so motions.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Do we have to have a second? Yeah. Curry, second.